Hello and welcome to the European Covenant of Companies for Climate and Energy's Masterclass on Energy Efficiency, the low-hanging fruit. The idea of the Masterclass today is to give an overview of more easy to take measures regarding energy efficiency in your company. These will be measures that you might already have heard of. They are commonly known for a large part. The idea is to go over them one by one. So to see that there are maybe ones that you haven't heard about yet, and then we can hopefully convince you to implement these now or in the future. The first question we have to ask is why do we want to improve the energy efficiency? And the basic answer is there. If we start reducing our energy use, we of course reduce the greenhouse gases that are emitted. But not only that, because that's of course quite simplistic. When we are not using energy, it's really zero CO2 that we are emitting for this, compared to when we would be switching to renewable energy sources, where we still have some carbon emissions during the production and installation process of these devices. Also, if we reduce our energy use, we have more of those renewables available for processes that aren't easy to reduce energy usage of, or for processes that are now not electrically powered, that could then in the future maybe be electrically powered. If we go into more detail, we'll see that we have 4 categories that we could talk about here when we're talking about energy efficiencies in companies. The first one is called industry. What we're mainly aiming at with this are the processes. Depending on the type of company you are, this might be a smaller or larger part of your energy usage, especially for manufacturing companies. This can be quite an extensive part of their energy usage. Now, this part is very specific to different industries, different sectors, might even differ between countries, and will definitely also differ between companies. And therefore, we cannot cover in the general masterclass that we're giving today. So we are left with the 3 other categories that we will be talking about today, which is the building, where we'll be talking about heating and cooling and lighting solutions. Next to that, we also have transportation. Again, here are 2 main categories that we can split this up into, which is staff, where we will be talking about their commuting energy usage, but also business travels, and more generally called goods, any business transportation regarding your in and outs for resources or finished products, anything else that you might need to have delivered. Then the last part, electricity, is actually linked to the previous 2, because in the previous 2 we're more talking about energy efficiency and reducing the energy usage. The last part we're talking about electricity, where we will look into reducing the carbon footprint of the energy that we are using, and electricity specifically in this case then. And there are again 2 main routes, changing the source of the electricity, or through flexibility, optimizing the usage. When it comes to building, we have a first category, heating and cooling. The first point that we would talk about there is an easy option to reduce your electricity usage, your energy usage, is to electrify this. By electrifying, 2 things happen. 1, we have an improved efficiency in general, and 2, we have a lower carbon footprint possible depending on the source of your electricity. But as we will see in the last part, we can change this ourselves by installing, for example, PV solutions. Then we are also talking or advising you to optimize your heat management. What we mean by this is it might be possible to have different control algorithms for your heating or cooling in your building. This could mean that, for example, your building has a centrally controlled heating system that is maybe at this point heating up the building, while there are some separate air conditioning units available that could cool down specific rooms. It would be a good idea to check that you don't have these systems that are in conflict with each other, where at the same time a room is being heated and being cooled, because this is, of course, a waste of energy. There are solutions to automatically shut down, for example, the cooling or the heating if the other is already functioning. But it might also be enough to place a placard to inform your staff about this, to make sure that they know not to turn on the cooling when the heat is on. The next point we talk about is reusing heat. If you have processes in your company, and in a manufacturing process, it might be a machine that produces a lot of heat, but it might also be your server room that produces heat. It might be a good idea to reuse this heat in your company. If you cannot immediately reuse it, there are also options for heat storage. This can be in the short term, where you would use the heat the same day still, but also seasonal storage is available. Of course, this is less of a quick win, but something to keep in mind if you are reintegrating your heating and cooling systems. The last one is definitely one of the energy saving options. It's the installation of the building. If you have a building with a large surface to the outside world, installation is very important to reduce the energy losses here. If you are heating a certain room, it might also be interesting to divide this from the rest of the building in a insulated way, ideally, to make sure that if you are, for example, heating the offices but not the production floor, that the heat isn't lost into the production floor. If you are improving the insulation and the air tightness of your buildings, do take into account, of course, the ventilation needs. This is also a place where you can gain energy efficiency by installing heat exchangers. This also works for cooling, of course, although it's called a heat exchanger. Also, cooling can be cooled air will cool the air that is coming in when it's going out through this to avoid energy losses here as well. And next point in a lot of buildings is the lighting. There are two big factors here. The first is a switch to LED lighting. LED lighting is in general more efficient than its counterparts, 80 to 90% compared to incandescent bulbs, 70% compared to halogen, and 60% still to the lighting. This means that with less energy, you can still have the same lighting, but compared to added to this, also they have a longer lifespan than the other lighting solutions. This means that you'll also have less maintenance requirements, which is also, of course, economically more interesting. The last part here is comfort. The main benefit of LED lighting is also that it's immediate to start up, and it's possible to have this in any color that you would like, any temperature of light, as we call it. And you can even have this change throughout the day, for example, to mimic the light of the sun. Next to switching to a more efficient lighting source like LED, it's also interesting to check the usage of your lighting. If you have lights that are turned on continuously, it might be a good question to check if this is necessary or not. If it isn't, install automatic timers that turn it on and off when needed, or even motion sensors in places where it's dependent on the people that are in the building or not. When we're talking about the usage of your building, also a good idea might be to have an energy audit done. I won't go into the details here, but if you are on the path to reducing your emissions, an energy audit will at some point be advisable. We have a separate masterclass on this, where we'll talk you through the entire process, what you'll need to prepare, what you can expect afterwards. Even if you aren't thinking about an energy audit short term, it's still interesting to check out this masterclass and see what you might be able to do in future or what it really entails. If we then switch to our next category, transportation. As I said before, there are two main categories that we will talk about here. The first one being staff. For certain companies that are more service-based, this will be a large part of the emissions that you are responsible for, and especially then through the commute of your staff. Ideally, you have your staff commutes by foot or by bike, because this produces, of course, the least amount of CO2. This isn't as easy, of course, for every company, depending on your location. But even if you are a bit further away by bike, you can make it more enticing to come by bike by providing certain bike amenities, specifically secure storage for your employees' bike, so that they are certain that it won't get stolen during the day, and also showers and locker rooms, so that they can have a shower after they arrive at work and might have been rained on or have been sweating. Next option is public transport. Generally something you as a company can not really influence a lot, but if you have limited public transport options nearby, especially if it's, for example, a bus that only comes once an hour or a train that only comes once an hour, might be worth checking if it's possible to change your working hours or your shift hours to match those of the public transport. This would mean that if the bus only arrives once an hour, that you would start working right after the bus has arrived and would end the day at some point a little bit before the bus will leave again. If people are coming by car, it would be advisable to try to encourage carpooling amongst colleagues. There are certain benefits that you can give people that are carpooling to the company, like, for example, the better parking spots, or if you have limited parking space available, maybe you can even say that only the people who are carpooling get a parking spot. A second option to greenify your commute emissions or the commute emissions of your staff is to also provide EV charging. That way you can both entice your staff to switch to electric vehicles because it will be easier for them to own one. If they, for example, live in an apartment, they cannot charge at home. Maybe for them charging at work makes it viable to buy an EV. And also you can link the EV charging to your own renewable production and therefore reduce the emissions by making sure that they are charged as much as possible with renewable energy, which you cannot control if they are charged at home. Then a second part of staff travel is the business travel. We are already assuming here that the business travel is necessary. If it's not necessary, of course, the most energy efficient option is don't do the travel, stay at the company and meet online, for example. But when you have to go out, again, check the carbon intensity of the transport mode you would like to use. Trains are more sustainable than planes in general. This is also an economic choice because in general, still trains are more expensive than planes. but they will have less carbon emissions compared to the planes. And also here again, if you have representatives that have a company vehicle to go and visit, for example, different clients, switching to electric vehicles can reduce your carbon emissions as well. Then we have goods transportation. Here there are two main routes. The first one being electrification. There are also other options still available at the moment when we're talking about biofuels to reduce energy or emissions at the moment. But in the long term, we are generally talking about electrifying your transports. So this is an option that you should already take into account when you're designing your buildings to make sure that it will be possible to charge these trucks in general as well. And also to make sure that this is something in your business plans you are already foreseeing that probably the next trucks or the trucks after that will be electric vehicles. The second part of this is optimization. With this, we want to make sure that you are not having trucks run around empty. Even an electric truck that is driving around without a load is still a waste of energy. Ideally, you can plan your transports to make sure that they are never empty or combine with different companies to at least have as large a portion of the route loaded as possible. Again, also the transportation part would be part of an energy audit. So also for this, it's interesting to look into this route of an energy audit. If we are then talking about the last category, electricity, then we have set two routes. First is to increase the share of renewables. By increasing the share of renewables, the emissions of our energy per unit go down. And the most interesting way for most companies will be to install solar on site. We do have a masterclass on this as well, getting started with PV. Here you'll also get the complete walkthrough of how do we have to size this, what technologies, what do we have to take into account when we do this. So if you are thinking about EV or if you have any doubt, please check out this masterclass. It will help you in this part as well. Second part is linking the usage to the production. We have an example to the right here where you can see that we have a profile in yellow of our production. So we have no production night, and then during the day it will peak and then go down again by the nightfall. This is a more typical profile for south-orientated PV panels, which in general, for total production, they are still the most efficient. So that's why we have taken them in this example. And in this example, we have two green bars, which are our production times. We have quite an intensive production cycle in this company, but during lunch, we all have lunch at the same time and the production is halted. So this means that while we can cover before and afternoon a reasonable portion of our energy usage with our own PV production, at the most interesting point when we have most production, we are actually not using the energy. So what is a suggestion here when we're talking about linking usage to production is a small improvement, but for example, the cooling in this case could be shifted. So we would shift the cooling, which was the blue bar on top, from just before noon to during noon, and also a bit after noon. Also, we would shift it to during noon. How do we do this? We do this by, at this point in time, increasing the temperature set points for our cooling system, meaning that it will cool less because it takes a while for the site to warm up. And then during the lunch hours, we will reduce the set point below the original one and try to use our cooling system as much as possible to cool down everything while we are not using the electricity for production, so that after lunch, when we start production again, we can at least for some time switch off the cooling system. This is only a small improvement, but at least it has shifted some portion of our energy usage to the time when we are producing it ourselves. Another example of this could be EV charging. In this example, we have a production cycle where we are using electricity at quite high numbers intermittently. So from the moment we start, we have machines run at a certain interval in this case, which means that we are not really optimizing our energy usage. If we now have quite a large capacity for EV charging, which are the black bars, we can start charging the EVs during the time periods that the production is not spiking its energy usage. And that way still charge the cars, in this case with 100% renewables. In this example, we've chosen to stop the charging here in the assumption that this would have been enough to charge all vehicles. If this wouldn't have been the case, if we do not have enough production during a day to do this, because it's winter or any other reason that we maybe do not have a large enough PV installation for this, then a smart algorithm would start somewhere in the afternoon to charge, even if there is not enough solar production to cover this. And the last suggestion, when we are talking about linking usage to production, of course, these are our suggestions, other options are also available, is in this example, we have a reasonable continuous energy usage for our production during the day. We already have some EV charging here in the black bar box, and we have one big spike in the morning for a machine that only needs to run once a day, and that's now run in the morning, produces specific materials that we use up during the rest of the day. Here, the very quick win is quite obviously to move this production spike to around noon, when we have the most solar production, and that way we can make sure that we optimize our solar usage. We see that the EV charging is still present here, but will stop during this production spike as well, as we have also seen during the previous example. One last possibility here is link production to usage. What do we mean with this? In these examples, I've been talking about a profile with southernly orientated panels, but this does not need to be the case. It's also possible to go for an east-west installation, for example, which would mean you would have a more flat curve. This is in space on a flat roof, you'll get about the same production compared to just south-orientated panels. Per panel, you'll have less energy production over a year, but if this fits better your energy needs, it's probably more interesting to look at this option and to place more panels in total. At the moment, the cost for solar is very low, so it's really the moment to install this as well. I hope I've given you some options for energy efficiency increases that you can take
in your company. If there are any other questions, you can contact me at lawrence@thinke.be.